Hello everyone, and welcome to another Cut Rate Commander First Impressions, the series where I give my mostly blind reaction to upcoming Commander Precons. My name is Grazzet, and as usual, we have my co-host Kaprak joining us to provide the contents of the Precon to me, as well as to weigh in with his opinions as well. How is the day treating you, sir?
Honestly, it's been a wonderful one, and I have been looking forward to yet another deck from the Bloomburrow Commander sets.
Alright, good. Let's see what we are looking at today.
Let's just break right into it. We have the Jeskai deck Family Matters.
Family Matters. Make offspring go wide. Okay, so the offspring mechanic was introduced in this set where you can get 2 for the price of 1, functionally, the second card being a 1/1 copy of the original. So assuming this deck is going to go big on that offspring mechanic, and by extension just flooding the board with offspring, ways to multiply those tokens, etc., etc.
Yeah, now that we actually know what Offspring does, I am afraid for this commander, because we had seen him briefly when they previewed them, and this deck's going to go wide and go fun.
Alright, let's see that commander then, because I honestly have forgotten what he does.
Okay. Well, our commander for this deck is Zinnia, Valley's Voice. For Jeskai, you get a 1/3 legendary bird bard with flying that has +X+O, where X is the number of other creatures you control with base power 1, and it gives all creatures you cast offspring too.
Okay, so 3 mana gets you a 1/3, so below average stats for her cost. Evasive Body, which is a plus, gets bigger with the amount of base 1 power creatures that are going to be on the board, which is going to be all the offspring you're going to be creating. And the creature spells you cast having offspring means that you can run creatures without offspring to get copies of them, particularly good with lords and things that have static abilities. Question, does offspring stack? Like if a creature has offspring already, are there separate instances of offspring at that point?
I am not sure, but most likely yes, because it would just it having 2 additional cost effects.
All right, we're going to have to check that. But yeah, in this particular case, if we're going to go all in on the offspring mechanic, we're going to have a lot of base 1 power creatures, meaning that Zinnia is going to go ahead and get pretty big with her first ability there, and then just being able to get extra copies of creatures that have ETB effects, have static abilities on the board, that's going to allow us to make pretty degenerate boards.
Yeah, Offspring is a mechanic that feels like it is safe on a lot of the creatures in Bloomburrow for the most part, but putting it on everything, and there's going to be something to generate. I guarantee it.
Yeah, there's creatures that you don't want 2 copies of, and this just enables that because the stats really don't matter. You just want crazy effects on the board or crazy ETBs that you're just paying 2 additional for.
Well, with that, let's at least take a look at the alternate commander, Arthur Marigold Knight. For 2 in Jeskai, you get a legendary Mouse Knight that is 4/5 with haste. Whenever Arthur and at least 1 other creature attacks, you look at the top 6 cards of your library and may put a creature card from among those 6 onto the battlefield tapped and attack. The rest go on the bottom of your library in a random order, and then you return that creature to its owner's hand at the end of combat.
Okay, 5 mana is a lot more than the face commander. You're getting a bit higher stats with haste, so he can swing in as soon as he comes down, which is useful because he has an attack trigger. And that attack trigger is pretty decent because we're looking at a sneak attack. Yes, we're looking at a sneak attack on an effect that is not from your hand, but it's from the top of your deck, so it can whiff, not as reliable. The creature is tapped and attacking, so it can be blocked and killed in combat.
And you don't get attack triggers.
If you don't get attack triggers because it is tapped and attacking when it comes down, still get damage triggers and ETB triggers, so that's a plus. And then it gets bounced back to your hand at the end of combat, so you have to recast it.
Or put it on top of your library again somehow.
Yeah, fair. But yeah, overall, Arthur here is not bad. I can't say that he's as good as the face commander, I think. I think the face commander is a tough act to follow.
So, the face commander immediately reads to me like, I'm going to cast some mid-sized creatures because everything costs 2 extra and go real wide. Arthur feels like we're just going to start dropping like Leviathans and stuff. Like, hey, this is a 9 mana creature. I'm not casting it. I'm going to put it back on top of my library when this is all done.
Yeah, I think this particular commander wants to go all in on just gigantic things because he allows you to cheat them into play. Then if you have ways to manipulate the top of your deck by putting cards in your hand back on top, and you're in the colors of extra turns, extra combat phases, so being able to do that consistently is just going to put you in a position where you're just going to be able to hit your opponents with gigantic beat sticks over and over again with powerful effects, powerful static on damage effects, ETB triggers, and just take over the game that way.
Yeah, I think the big hurdle for him is going to make sure that he can survive combat. But 4/5 and in Jeskai,
Yeah, we have access to a lot of evasion in blue, so that shouldn't be a problem, I don't think.
there's probably something out there I'm not thinking of that just when it enters the battlefield can protect this guy.
Maybe. There's Bastion Protector, the thing that makes your commander indestructible.
Yeah, but I'm thinking like a little bit more permanent because it'll get bounced back to your hand.
There may be something that ETBs with an indestructible counter on something, but I can't think of it.
I'll do a little digging for you just in case this guy wins. So, moving on from the commanders for the set, we've also got the new cards. And right off the top, we've got Agate Instigator. For 1 in a red, you get a 1/3 Lizard Rogue with Offspring that is also 1 in a red that says whenever another creature you control enters, this creature deals 1 damage to each opponent.
Okay, so for 2 mana, you get a 1/3. For 4 mana, you get 2/4 worth of stats across 2 bodies. But the important thing here is that we're in a token deck, and this thing deals AoE burn every time any creature enters the battlefield apart from itself.
This is 2 more Impact Tremors, yes.
This is just impact tremors on a body that you can get 2 of. Yeah, it's pretty good. Depending on how quickly we can flood the board with token bodies, this is going to be able to quickly just burn out opponents.
Mm-hmm. And if you can Offspring twice, which again, I believe you can, it's just 2 additional costs, this can be 3 Impact Tremors.
Yeah, I'm just curious on how well this deck can create tokens outside of Offspring, because I'm thinking we've got Populate and other ways to create token copies of our tokens and stuff like that, because paying 2 is going to stress our mana constantly having to do that.
You're not wrong. Also, I will point out, because Offspring becomes a ETB trigger when you pay the cost, this guy enters, and then the second one will enter, and this guy will see him enter, and will immediately deal 1 to everybody.
Okay, yeah, so you do get a free point of burn if you pay the 4, so that's nice. Yeah, this guy can get really out of hand and is probably going to see a lot of play, even in decks that aren't dedicated to Offspring, just token decks. It's just extra reach.
So, what can't you do with Impact Tremors?
I don't know, what can't you do with Impact Tremors?
Give it lifelink.
Oh, right, because this is on the creature, and the creature is dealing the damage because it says this creature, so if you give it lifelink, if you give it infect...
Oh, see, this is how I know we're different people.
Yes, like, oh, I can gain life off this. I can kill people faster. But yes, he is a good card. This lizard is good.
Yes, it's a solid piece that is going to go in the decks that it goes in.
Yeah.
Moving on, we're going to continue the history of, wow, this is an awesome name that has popped up in a lot of these sets with Jacked Rabbit.
Oh.
For X, 1 and white. Okay, I'll let you get it out of your system.
Oh man, this rabbit is yoked. This art is fantastic.
Yes.
I don't care what he does.
For X, 1 and white, you get a 1/2 rabbit warrior with Ravenous. As a reminder, Ravenous is from the Warhammer 40k sets on the Tyranids.
All right, you have to pay X.
X is +1/+1 counters. If it is 5 or more, you draw a card. And whenever Jacked Rabbit attacks, create a number of 1/1 white rabbit creature tokens equal to Jacked Rabbit's power. Also, I am going to direct you back to the art where he is wielding a giant squash as a weapon.
Yeah, okay. Fantastic art aside. Mechanically, this guy is a 2 mana 1/2, but realistically, that's never going to happen because you're going to pump as much mana into him as possible to get him to Ravenous, which is going to be 7 mana total.
Yeah, I believe 7 mana is the floor to get the card.
Yeah, so 7 mana, you're getting a 6/7?
Yes.
And on top of that, you're going to be getting 5 tokens every time he swings in.
Also, it is worth mentioning, I might be wrong about this, but I do believe, as this is an X spell, if you make a copy with Offspring, the value of X should be copied. And because Ravenous is an enter the battlefield trigger, or it's not an enter the battlefield trigger, it's not a trigger, it's a stipulation, I think the Offspring would see the value you paid and then gain the +1/+1s.
That would be disgusting, if that is the case.
I believe that is how it works.
Would you still get the card?
If X is 5 or more. So if you pay a total of 9 to get 2 of these, one of them being a 6/7, one of them being a 6/6. I might be wrong, but I believe that is how that interacts.
Okay, we'll put that in the video here when we figure that out. But yeah, if that's the case, this guy gets even better. Because again, the face commander can give this guy offspring, get 2 of them, and if we can get Ravenous on both of them, that turns this into a cantrip into draw, gets us even more tokens into play when they swing in, and all you're really losing out on is 1 toughness on the copy.
It is worth mentioning, though, that is 9 mana, which is pretty prohibitive, and we're not in green.
Yeah, but we got rocks. We got ways to do this. I have faith, and this is probably a finisher.
I think this is just a generically good card, if I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, I think it'll find a better home in Selesnya decks, really, than here, because you're not wrong in the fact that we just don't have the gigantic mana bases in Jeskai to be able to get this guy huge really, really fast.
And frankly, because it's an attack trigger, it doesn't actually do anything until it swings, except for cantrip.
Yeah, but we are in red, so we do have lots of ways to give this thing haste.
It's a card that, in theory, scares me. In practice, who knows?
I mean, just look at the art. Just look at the art and enjoy the art, because this is fantastic. The name is fantastic. The art is fantastic. I just like this card for just the whole thing minus the effect. The effect is fine too, but this is fantastic.
But to keep moving forward, we're going to look at a card that I think has people talking a lot. I haven't been as in tune to the discourse, but we have Pollywog Prodigy. For 1 and a blue, you get a 1/3 Frog Wizard with Evolve, and whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell with mana value less than Pollywog Prodigy's power, draw a card.
Okay. 2 mana and it's you a 1/3. That's pretty good stats for the cost. Evolve is going to get real big real fast, depending on how quickly we can get creatures into play that are bigger than it. It having 1 base power, that should be fairly easy, at least to get it into a 2 power, 3 power. And then you have a tax effect that says if your opponents cast spells, you get to draw a card, eventually making it so that if they cast anything, let's say sub 4, lets you draw a card. That's pretty good.
And you don't have to just get this thing's power up with Evolve. There are other ways you can do that.
Yeah. Evolve is a good way to do it out of the gate, but yeah, there's ways to get this thing's power up through +1/+1 counters, lords, things like that, and then you're in business.
Anthems, equipment, enchantments.
Yeah, and this then just becomes a way to benefit from your opponent's casting spells, right? Every piece of instant speed removal they use is going to turn into card advantage for you. You don't get to benefit off of their creature casts, but that's, again, a small price to pay for being able to draw off everything else.
If you can get this thing to like 3 relatively quickly, it pretty much guarantees a 1-for-1 itself. Even if they spend a piece of removal, they're probably going to spend 3 or less and you get the card. Or sorry, 2. It's not 3 or less, it's just 1 or 2. It's not equivalent. Now, the other thing is, this card is also probably not going to be the most dangerous thing on the table most of the time. You're going to drop it, and it's only going to hit zeros, so, 0 mana artifacts, really, and nobody's going to care. It's going to get up to 2, so 1, people really aren't going to care. And then by the time it's 4, you've probably played some other things that they care more about, so they have to get rid of that. This thing's probably going to accrue a surprising amount of card advantage, and I think that's why this one's actually pre-selling for a fair amount, so I think people are high on this.
Yeah, I personally think this card is going to be valuable in a lot of different decks. +1/+1 counter decks are just going to run it as an additional source of card advantage, repeatable card advantage. The fact that this can be granted offspring by the face commander means that you're going to have 2 of them in play. That means you're drawing 2 cards potentially. They both get evolve triggers, so they're both going to be growing at an equal pace because, again, they both have 1 power. So, yeah, this in this deck is good. In other decks is going to be good. This is going to find a home in a lot of places. This is going to pull a lot of weight in those decks.
Now, moving on, we have Rapid Augmenter. For 1 and Izzet, you get a 1/3 Otter Artificer with haste. Whenever another creature you control with base power 1 enters, it gains haste until end of turn. Whenever another creature you control enters, if it was not cast, put a +1/+1 counter on Rapid Augmenter, and Rapid Augmenter cannot be blocked this turn.
Okay. 3 mana, 1/3 hasty boy. Not the greatest stats, but it does make all of your offspring hasty, so that's a benefit.
It makes the majority of tokens printed hasty.
True. We have a lot of 1/1 tokens or 1x tokens, so being able to swing in with them as soon as they come down is good. And the important thing is that this says base power. This doesn't care about anthems, doesn't care about lords, this doesn't care about +1/+1 counters, it doesn't care about anything that empowers it after the fact. It just cares about that it's a 1x token.
So the first thing I have to say is, wow, this gives 0/4 wall tokens haste. Real neat.
I mean, now we just have to bypass the fact that they have Defender, but sure.
You can do that easier than you think. But I am scared of this thing in some decks that just absolutely churn out Thopter and Servo tokens.
Yeah, because it makes them all hasty. You have ways to empower those Thopters. And then this guy, with his last ability, is going to get gigantic and unblockable.
Well, okay, so that's if it was not cast. The catch is, that's tokens. That's all of them.
Yeah.
I'm just sitting here like, okay, we're going to do something fun, and is it? And I have a Sharding Sphinx, and I'm going to hit somebody with it, and generate an absolutely absurd amount of tokens, and then I'm going to improvise something out, and it just snowballs hard.
Yeah, Thopter decks are going to be able to run token decks in general, right?
Yeah.
Let's not sugarcoat it. Token decks are going to run this so long as those tokens are 1x's.
Well, yeah, but a lot of tokens decks traditionally aren't in, is it? So that's why I'm going straight for, like, oh yeah, the weird artifact ones that go incredibly wide.
Yeah, it works well and gets more damage. Thopters are naturally evasive, so they're going to be able to get in despite their 1 power, even if they're not pumped. And being able to make this friend evasive as well means that you're going to be able to get in for damage reliably. So yeah, I can see that working rather well.
Well, that's all of the creatures in the deck. But we do have one big ol' sorcery. And that would be a Calamity of Cinders. For 7 mana, 5 and 2 red. But with Convoke, Calamity of Cinders deals 6 damage to each untapped creature.
Okay, that's cute.
Blocking is for cowards.
So it's a 2-mana wipe.
No, Convoke can pay for colored mana.
Okay, fair. I keep forgetting that. So yes, this is a free wipe with a wide enough board state, which keeps the creatures that you used to pay for it alive.
And anything you attacked with. And anything you used for a tap ability.
Yeah, this is pretty good. I mean, it's not Blasphemous Act.
No, it's only 6, and it doesn't hit their things that they attacked with.
True.
Unless it has Vigilance.
Yeah, it's not as good as just straight up damage because it may potentially not hit everything. It's only 6 damage, so it's not going to hit the biggest contenders like Blasphemous Act could, and if they're constantly swinging with their gigantic creatures, it's not going to kill them either. So it is limited, but it is free.
Yes, it is mostly free.
So yeah, there is some downside, some upside. I think this is fine. The more I look at it, the less I like it.
So I think the big thing it has going for it is, so frequently when you're about to wrath the board, you'll just swing in with all your creatures, and, people will know to make blocks because, like, oh, well, clearly a wrath is being telegraphed. This allows you to swing in with some creatures, but leave enough back where people will go, oh, maybe this isn't a wrath. And then it is a wrath. And maybe they made some blocks that were bad because they were expecting a wrath, or maybe they made some blocks that were bad for you, but like, okay, your 8/8 just took 3 damage. Ooh. Now it took an additional 6 and is dead.
Well, I'm personally looking at this more as a way to break stalled board states efficiently, because you get into a point where people can't attack, so everything's untapped because they have no good attacks, or they're attacking with maybe one evasive thing, or one gigantic thing, because all of their creatures are not in a good spot to attack. In this case, you can go ahead and just tap down 7 creatures, which should be reasonable in a token deck, like your 7 most powerful creatures, play this. You lose some of your creatures if you couldn't tap them down, and then your majority of your opponents are going to lose the majority of their creature base.
And you have all your mana to rebuild immediately.
Right. This is the best case scenario, I think, for this particular card. But in situations where people are more dynamically attacking, where attacks are happening, this gets worse.
I still think it is interesting. The play pattern that you play with this card is not the same one you play with a typical Wrath.
Yeah, this isn't as telegraphed as your standard Wraths.
And because it is harder to predict, it makes people make mistakes.
Sure, I can see that. But yeah, overall, this is a situational Wrath, but it's still interesting.
For the amount of lines of text on this card, we sure talked a lot.
Yeah.
But moving on to the first of the trio of enchantments that will finish us off, we have the obligatory new class, Fortune Teller's Talent. 1 blue, you may look at the top card of your library at any time. You pay 4, get it up to level 2. As long as you've cast a spell this turn, you may play cards from the top of your library. You pay another 3 into that, 2 and a blue. Spells you cast from anywhere other than your hand cost 2 less.
Okay, that's interesting. So it's a build your own future site kind of, because you get the first part of Future Sight as soon as you cast this, so you can just look at the top card of your deck. Generally, that's worthless without other ways to manipulate your top deck.
Having a little bit more information is at least helpful to me.
Yep, you know you're not going to make your land drop next turn and then cry. But then when you get to 4, you get to cast spells off the top, or rather play anything off the top. It's not even cast spells. You can play lands off the top, which is nice, with the caveat that you have to cast a spell that turn to do it. So there is a little bit of a hoop to jump through there. Sometimes you just don't have anything you can cast, but it's still good. It's still a good effect. It's still card advantage. And then the last bit is just things you cast off the top of your deck cost 2 less.
Vega the Watcher got a new card.
And then again, this isn't just off the top of your deck. This is if you're casting from exile, if you're foretelling something.
Flashback.
The command zone.
Yep.
Because this it is not in your hand.
Yeah, it kills the first bit of commander tax.
Yeah, this is pretty good. It takes a little bit of time to build up, but that last bit makes it so that it's slightly better than Future Sight.
It doesn't do a lot that's mind-blowing, but does enough where you want to go, oh, maybe I'll put this in.
I mean, it's not as good as some other classes because its base level 1 is kind of worthless.
It doesn't have immediate impact.
Yeah.
But if you can find the time to level it up, which I find Commander tends to give you that time, it might be scary.
True. And just a caveat on that first ability, there is a kind of a side case that you can make for like scry heavy decks that just the extra information is nice to have, just so you can go ahead and go, well, I can play my scry piece now because I really don't want to keep that on top. So maybe.
Okay. Our second of these 3 enchantments is Echoing Assault. For 4 and a red, you get an enchantment that says creature tokens you control have menace. And whenever you attack a player, choose target non-token creature that's attacking that player. You create a token that is a copy of that creature, except it's a 1/1. It enters tapped and attacking that player, and you sacrifice it at the beginning of your next end step.
Okay, so for 5 mana, we're giving all our creature tokens bad evasion. Okay, so maybe that's not entirely fair, because if our board does go wide enough, we'll be able to get some extra attacks in, which isn't entirely worthless. Admittedly, I'm not the biggest fan of Menace, because I think there are better forms of evasion. Primarily, though, the thing we really are playing this for is that second ability, though, because we're getting a temporary offspring. We're just getting a temporary offspring that's going to get the ETB effect, going to get the passive ability, going to get the on-damage effect if it connects.
And a death effect, because it's a sacrifice trigger.
Yeah, it does sack itself, so if it has a on-death effect, it is going to proc it. So yeah, that's true. I can see this being another way to just get an extra Lord on board, right?
Yeah, this is not a mind-blowing card. This feels like a lot of little effects we've had before all bundled up into one. It's probably just good enough for this deck or some other decks like it. Especially a lot of the ones that do create temporary token copies of creatures. This just feels like it goes in decks that really want to go hard on Myriad or something. So now all your Myriad creatures have Menace. Yeah, giving all your 1/1 tokens Menace is fine. Giving all your 5/5 temporary tokens Menace? Well, now they're going to kill some things.
Yeah, it's true. Like you said, I'm not blown away by this particular card. I'm not enamored with the evasion it grants and the ability, just one thing that you're getting an extra copy of. I don't think that's enough for the 5 mana you're paying. Maybe it stays in this deck. Maybe it doesn't. We'll have to see. But overall, lukewarm reaction from me.
I think it does just enough, but yeah. Let's take a look at this last one. It is Murmuration. For 4 and a white, an enchantment that says, birds you control get +1/+1 and have vigilance. A bird typo. At the beginning of your end step, for each spell you've cast this turn, create a 1/2 blue bird token creature with flying named Stormcrow.
Okay, so throwback, I guess, for Stormcrow.
People love them some Stormcrow.
But just evaluating this at the face of it, it's a bird tribal card, so I guess how many birds are in this deck is the first question.
It isn't really.
Well, yes, because it creates its own birds, right?
Every single spell you cast turns into a 2/3 with flying and vigilance.
Right. It is at the end of the turn, but you are getting more tokens for free functionally after you pay the 5 mana.
That means that you can board wipe and walk out of it with a bird.
Notably, you do get the 1/2 when you cast this.
Yes, this will create a 1/2, which is a 2/3 with vigilance.
Yeah. So you're paying 5 mana for a 2/3 with vigilance. So it's not totally a do-nothing enchantment.
Yes.
But overall, yeah, it's not bad. Being able to just get additional value out of all the spells you cast in the form of evasive bodies in an already token-focused deck is going to be able to possibly just push you over the edge by giving you that extra unblockable damage that some decks just cannot deal with, especially if you have other ways to make your birds even bigger. So yeah, I can see this being part of a bird tribal deck. I can see this also pulling its weight here.
Like, remember earlier we were talking about impact tremors. Well, this functionally says every single creature spell you cast gets one extra impact tremors trigger.
Yeah, it's true. And the fact that these birds have vigilance is nice because you get to keep them up to block too. So yeah, this is a pretty decent card overall, I think.
Yeah, I'm glad I got you to agree on that. That is all the new cards in our set, so let's keep moving forward. So we're a bit removed from the actual release dates of the decks, so prices are a little... They've settled, things are coming down, but I've done my best to go back and track reprint prices before things started to fall. So we're just going to start off with my honorable mention, a card that is not necessarily expensive, but I'm glad it's here, so it stays where it belongs. Path to Exile.
Yeah, Path to Exile, pretty staple, white, efficient removal. Can't really complain about this being reprinted because this price tends to creep up a little bit if we don't see constant reprints.
Between this and the Assassin's Creed version, it's being kept below $1.
Yeah, fair.
It's just nice. Path to Exile should be cheap enough. Next on the block, something that was hovering around $1.50, $2 prior to this, I want to say. So it's the lowest of the low-end reprint. Elspeth, Sun's Champion.
Okay, I did not expect to see Elspeth in here, but I guess it makes sense because it creates tokens, blows up a bunch of stuff that's high power, and then creates an emblem that makes all your tokens stronger if you can get to her ultimate. So yeah, this makes sense in the deck, I guess.
Yeah, it's an entirely logical card in a true dedicated go-wide deck.
Yeah, I was more under the impression this deck wanted to not go wide with just generic tokens, but try to go as wide as possible with the offspring it creates, so get functionally 1/1 copies of actual creatures. But I guess this works too.
I think it's more included as a board wipe that incidentally has tokens on it.
Yeah, fair. You're not going to complain about this because even if you don't keep her in this deck, you're just going to stick her in another token deck. So, I mean, they're going to find a home somewhere.
Up next is a card I know you're going to be happy to see. It is Rapid Hybridization.
Yes, Rapid Hybridization really needed a reprint, and I'm very happy it's here because this stupid thing has been $3, $4, give or take, for far too long. Meanwhile, Path and Swords are $1. This thing needs to come down in price.
Well, if it makes you feel better, it's already sub $2.
Yeah, that's great. This needs to go down to closer to $1, and then I'll be happy. Because there's no reason this thing should be hanging around $3, $4 for as long as it has. This and the other 1 mana that does the exact same thing, that's a functional reprint. Pongify, yes.
Which I think did just get a reprint.
Oh, did it?
I think it was in one of the MH3 decks.
If it is, yeah, great. We need more of these in order to bring those prices down. So I'm real happy about this one.
Moving on, this next one about the same price as Rapid Hybridization. Selfless Spirit.
Selfless Spirit? Okay. It's a way to protect wide boards on a cheap body that you can easily offspring, so you can do it twice.
And it's recurable, which is something that is how it becomes from like, oh, this is a fine card, to like, oh, I hate this card.
I mean, how easily are we going to recur this in Jeskai?
I have no idea. I just mean in general. White's got a lot of stuff to get cheap things out of the bin, and this is all the ways that White cares about.
Yeah, that's true, but in a deck that cares more about tokens than recursion, that may be a tough sell in this particular deck, but yeah, I can see it. Personally, I think this deck is just going to have it as a, here's 2 ways to protect your board from wipes.
Yes. And we are quickly ratcheting up in price as we get higher up. We have another reprint for Combat Celebrant.
Combat Celebrant, which is just going to give us an extra combat phase, which you're not going to complain about. This thing has been expensive for a while. What's it hovering at right now?
Now it's about $6.
Yeah, previously?
Previously, the best I could find... Well, actually, sorry. Previously, it was about $6. Now it's about $3.
So this thing is down in price. It's an easy way to get extra combat phases, and 2 of them on board lets you just get infinite combat phases, right?
I don't think you get infinite because they don't untap themselves.
But one untaps the other.
Oh, way. They untap it. If Combat Celebrant has not been exerted this turn, you can't exert it more than once a turn. They thought about this. That's why they're game designers.
Okay, so extra copies of it, you can't go infinite. But each individual instance of Combat Celebrant, if you keep creating token copies of it.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. There's ways to do this, I think, to go infinite with this. If you have ways to constantly create tokens, like if you constantly populate, I guess, on attack or on damage.
Huh. I think that might work with Echoing Assault. You exert your first one to get a second combat phase, and you'll make a non-token version, and you'll just keep making 1/1s, and if you can keep the 1/1 versions alive...
Yeah, you don't sacrifice it until the next end step, so yeah, that works, I think.
Yep, they stay till the next end step. The first one will be exerted, but then when the second one you've made with the original Offspring thing attacks, it'll untap the original first one, allowing it to attack, which then you can Echoing Assault that first one to get another token. So as long as you can keep the chain of them alive somehow, yes, it should be infinite combat steps.
Okay, fair. I think there's other ways to do it too.
Yes, but that's just in the deck.
Yes, just what we have here, that works.
I think that works. Again, I'm flying by the seat of my pants here.
We'll put it here if it works or not.
Yes. Moving on, we have Curiosity Crafter.
Okay, another card that has been really expensive for a really long time.
Yeah, it used to be, what, $6, $7, I want to say?
Yeah, I think that's about right.
And it's already like half that?
Yeah, that's a really good thing because this is an all-star in token decks.
Yeah.
Just being able to turn all your tokens into repeatable card advantage as they get in for damage. Yeah, that's fantastic.
But what about second Curiosity Crafter?
Yeah, that's not a May trigger, so you are going to quickly deck yourself.
You mean win?
Possibly, but it is a good card. And the fact that you have no maximum hand size after means that even if you do overdraw, you're not going to be pitching resources, which is nice. You're just going to have to worry about decking yourself.
Yes. So, moving on. Another genuinely good reprint that I like here. Luminous Broodmoth.
Mothra is in here? I did not expect that.
Air quotes, Mothra.
Yes. Yeah, 4 mana, 3/4 flyer. Decent enough stats, I guess, but you're really playing her for that passive, which if a creature dies, you get to bring it right back with a flying counter on it, if so long as it doesn't have a flying counter already.
Or it was a flyer. It never brings back flyers.
Yeah, doesn't bring back flyers, so doesn't bring back your commander if you're playing the face commander, but in this particular case, it's fine. You don't get the Offspring trigger because you have to do it as you cast the creature, so you don't get to make an extra copy of it, but...
It's board protection.
Yeah, it protects against board wipes. It also allows you to be a bit more reckless with your core creatures that you've already made offsprings of, if you don't really care whether they die or not. Or if you have ETB ways to create even more copies of them.
Yes.
Then you get to proc it again, and then you don't have to worry about recasting them or other stuff. So yeah, I can see this being a good piece so long as we have those in the deck to take advantage of it.
And our last reprint, our high-value reprint, this is a token deck, right?
Yeah.
What's a high-value token card that could go in this deck?
Well, I know a couple.
But they're in green.
Well, is it the Dove? Is it the Dove that got reprinted?
It's not the Dove. It's not Anointed Procession. I still think you'll appreciate it. It's Helm of the Host.
Helm of the Host. I mean, it makes sense now, doesn't it? Because we're creating token copies. This is just Offspring that passively happens on combat, but you get the full statted creature instead of just a 1/1 copy of it. And it bypasses Legendary, which means stick this on your commander, and let's see how much mana you can pump into every single one of these things if you can get multiple instances of Offspring.
Again, I think multiple instances of Offspring stack. You get like 4 of your commanders, you just decide to churn a ridiculous amount of mana into the Impact Tremors creature, and then you just, I don't know, create 5 tokens somehow and just watch the table cry.
Or a particularly spicy lord and make all your things gigantic, or just any level of shenanigans that we can do with Helm of the Host, which, again, Helm of the Host is the poster child for shenanigans, right?
Yes. It's a card that it can be played very fair and nice and straightforward. I don't expect that.
No. Helm does degenerate things, generally.
Yeah.
And the decks that run it are fully aware of that and fully intend to do so.
Frequently trying to rush this thing out so they can do some dumb combo with their commander. That's not what's going on here, so yay?
I mean, even with the Offspring cards here, you're still going to be sticking this on things you want to make copies of to get even more copies of them. So let's be frank here, this is going to be real good in this deck.
Yes, absolutely. Well, those are all the cards that I would say were of decent value. If you think we missed anything, if something was, a couple of bucks and it's already like a quarter and I didn't notice it, let us know in the comments. But otherwise, let's take a second to look at the rest of the deck and get back to you guys with his thoughts.
Yep.
So, after looking at it, what do you think?
Well, let's start off with the positives. Land base, fantastic. We've got pain lands, all 3 in here, all 3 check lands, all 3 fast lands, a bunch of filter lands. We're not going to be hard up for any mana in this particular deck. So that is grade A, no complaints from me.
The rocks are good too.
Yep, it has good rocks. I really can't complain about that.
If I'm going to read the vibe right, it's also 100 cards.
Yes, it is 100 cards.
That are all legal in Commander.
So it is a legal deck to play. They're all legal to play in Commander. These are positive things. The rest of the deck is what I have issue with, because this was not at all what I was expecting when looking at the Commander, the new cards that we went over, because Offspring targets, in my opinion, are severely lacking. We have certain things like maybe Solemn Simulacrum. Oh, we can get 2 ramp and 2 cantrips when it dies. Ooh. And, payoffs for that like Rose Room Treasurer, which give us a little bit of incidental value as we create those tokens. But other than that, this looks like it's just a bunch of value creatures that we're getting extra copies of, or just weird things that don't belong in the deck. Like Spirited Companion, Inspiring Overseer. What are we doing?
Drawing cards?
Yeah, we're drawing cards by paying 4 mana to draw 2 or 5 mana to draw 2 and gain 2 life. That is not worth it.
So you get 2 bodies.
That's still not worth it.
So I think we overlooked one line on Zinnia. Zinnia gets +X+O, where X is the number of other creatures you control with base power 1.
Okay.
I think this is a stealth Voltron commander. You're going wide. Everyone's scared of your wide board, and they forget that you have like a 9/3.
They're not going to be scared of your wide board when your wide board is filled with utility creatures that did everything they were going to do as soon as they entered the battlefield.
Yeah, but you have an evasive 9/3.
That dies to removal.
Yeah, but it was a 3-drop. I think this deck is gonna be deceptively fast out of the box.
I mean, you say that, but I'm looking at Inferno Titan, I'm looking at Sun Titan, which have no business being in here, by the way, as what are we going to do with 1/1 copies of them?
It's the enter the battlefield trigger that you're getting out of these.
We're paying 8 mana at that point.
Well, you're already paying 6, so an extra 2 for an extra copy. Hypothetically, imagine that you could pay 2 to copy the ETB trigger of Inferno Titan. Would you? I think most people would.
I mean, sure, you get a 1/1 body, and then you get to do it again when it attacks.
And Inferno Titan's actually the better example of the 2 for that, because it's got fire breathing. It's actually kind of dangerous to block.
That's fair, but I think we have better things to do with 8 mana, and there's better things we can copy with Offspring that would have more impact on the board at 6 mana even, if we were to just cast this for what it's worth.
That's possible. Again, I think what this deck really wants to benefit from is throw a Whisper Silk Cloak on Zinnia and go, okay, I'm just going to go really wide and kind of be defensive-ish and maybe trade off 1 or 2 of my useless tokens and then 2-shot you with my commander out of nowhere.
Okay, assuming that's the direction the deck wants to go in, why don't we have lords that make Zinnia stronger?
Because that muddies the waters, because then these creatures... Okay, so yes, it's base power.
Yeah, it's base power 1, so lords would have absolutely no effect, yet, mysteriously, they're completely absent from this deck, and they would help the Voltron aspect of the deck.
And I have a feeling that's because it would confuse the hell out of new players. And this is still an intro deck. Commander decks are designed to onboard new people.
I don't know, man.
Especially for standard sets.
I can understand that, but I think that we've missed the mark here severely. This feels like a deck that is going to just play creatures for value, for Offspring, inefficiently, mind you, because we have spells that do what the Offspring spells would have done for less mana. They don't give us the 1/1 bodies, they don't make Zinnia stronger. That's the argument that could be made, but it just feels weird to me. It feels like we missed a big opportunity to just have things with powerful passive effects, powerful ETB effects, other than just drawing cards, which we're lousy with here.
Those do tend to be pricey.
Yeah, but there's no reason that we couldn't include like 1 or 2 in here. I mean, we have Angel of the Ruins in here.
That's fixing. That's fixing.
The only deck that runs is Reanimator decks.
It's not even basic plane cycling. It's just plane cycling. It can get
us one of the battle lands if they're in here.
Is there a non-basic planes in this deck? Please help me. Wizards, I'm trying.
You're trying to...
Okay, so...
We can't fetch non-basics because there are none.
I didn't look too closely at the mana base because you said it was good.
It is pretty good. It has no battle lands in it. I don't think there may be battle lands in this color, to be honest.
I think there are. I think they completed that cycle. There's got to be at least one planes.
But look at what we've got here. We've got creatures like Thopter Engineer, creates extra 1/1s. Sure, it makes Zinnia stronger, so that kind of feeds into what your thought of what the deck should be is. Yeah. But then you have things like Cloud Blazer, 7 mana, draw 4.
That's really good.
That is a lot of mana, and that is more card draw.
You're also ignoring the fact that it is 3/3 worth of flying stats, and there is 4 life.
Okay, life is irrelevant. We have Illusionary Ambusher in this deck. I want you to justify that.
I don't know what that card does, and I do not want to learn.
It is a 4/1 that costs 5, has flash, and whenever it's dealt damage, you draw that many cards.
That's a lot of card draw.
That is a combat trick that you're paying 5 mana for.
So if I can kill a 4/4, would you pay 5 mana to destroy target creature, draw 4 cards?
I would have to keep 5 mana up on my turn. That is never happening in Commander.
You're in blue. Of course it's happening.
No, your opponent's not going to do anything to you if you have mana open.
Well, then you're coming out ahead.
Jeez, you are trying your hardest here, aren't you, to try to justify this deck?
We have other instant speed stuff that you can drop. You can...
Okay, here's a good card. Junkwinder's good in here.
I think the affinity would apply to the Offspring as well, because that's an additional cost. I think you can use things like affinity and delve to pay for additional costs.
Okay, so the Offspring would be free?
There's a chance the Offspring might be free. Again, this is just 20 plus years of Magic knowledge. I might have something wrong.
Okay. Boss's Chauffeur is not bad either. We're going to be going wide here anyway, so this thing is going to come in with a decent amount of +1/+1 counters on it, and then it's just going to make everything else bigger. It keeps the base power, keeps making Zinnia bigger, and then when it dies, it just creates more tokens, so that's fine. But then we've got Circuit Mender for another cantrip thing for some reason. I think we missed the mark on this one. That's all I'm saying.
If you think they missed the mark, find it.
Yeah.
That's what you do, right?
Yeah, but we also have to take a look at what the deck is out of the box. And all I'm seeing is a bunch of draw and weird stuff. Skyclave Apparition, sure, 5 mana, get rid of 2 things. Yeah, that's solid removal if you can double up on it, sure. But then you have Hanged Executioner, which you paying 5 mana. You have to pay 5 mana, 2 pieces of removal. That's not even removal when it comes down. You have to pay 4 mana on top of that.
But it's also 4 bodies.
Yeah. I guess you can make the argument for 1/1 bodies on top of that, so Zinnia is getting +4 power off this. I'm just saying, even if we were assuming that this is a commander that's in on the Voltron, Lords would have made more sense, right?
Yes. I understand that perspective, and I don't disagree with it. I also think it's definitely going to be confusing to newer players.
Fair.
Again, I want to see what you do with this. We have the rare pleasure of having people listening to us who can give us their thoughts on how they think this deck should go. I think that you should not neglect the Boros half of this deck and just go face. This is Boros with card draw. This is not a control deck. This is go face.
I mean, yeah, sure, but you can only go so much face with 1/1s, right? You'd have to, even if we were going to swing for the fences, if we're exclusively swinging in with our commander, we don't have a whole lot of ways to protect her. Our removal suite, our instant speed doesn't have a single piece of spell disruption in it. Our commander's super vulnerable to just being killed.
That's what the great part about this discussion is. You're realizing what you need to put in the deck in real time.
And our board wipes are also pathetic. Aetherized, Time Wipe, what are we doing?
Time Wipe is fine. Yeah, you can do better, but it's fine.
I mean, you're even resetting Zinnia back to 0. Even if we're trying to make her Voltron, Time Wiping, even if we save her, it's still bad.
Oh yeah. Any board wipe sets her back to 0, though. So
that's true. This one's just particularly like, oh, I get to not pay commander tax. But yeah, it is strange. I'm going to tell you right there, it's not what I expected, and this seems to be an ongoing theme on the decks that we've seen so far. It's not quite what I expected.
Small piece of secret tech that I think we forgot about. Our commander's a bird. Murmuration makes it a 2/4 with flying and vigilance.
I'll alert the media.
Hey.
It's one more piece of commander damage.
Its front end gets so... Every single spell you cast creates a bird token, which each one of those bird tokens, because it's base power 1, will pump your commander by 1.
I can see that, yeah, sure. But as the people may have discovered at this point, not a fan of this deck out of the box. It seems very strange to me. It seems like there was so much potential on what we could have done with just being able to make copies of things that would have impacted the board more other than just draw cards. I think we missed the mark on that. But it sounds like, Kaprak, you're a lot more optimistic on what this deck can do.
Oh, I I haven't looked too in-depth at all the decks. I don't know if this one would necessarily win in an even matchup against all four. But I think it's the deck that probably plays the most straightforward, where you're just playing dudes and then you realize, wow, my commander's a 10-3. I should attack with that, shouldn't I?
What's the worst that's going to happen? Oh, I got pathed.
Hey, that's called ramp.
Oh, we will have to see what I can do with this, because this is my nightmare. This is a deck that I think needs a lot of work, and I can only change up so many cards. I only have $35 worth of budget.
That's why you gotta find the best cards that are cheap.
Well, we did just get a bunch of reprints, so we'll see what happens. But okay, so that, I guess, is my and Kaprak's opinion on this particular deck. But let us know in the comments if you agree with my assessment here, or if you're more in line with Kaprak's more optimistic outlook. Otherwise, this has been Grazzet.
And I'm Kaprak.
And I hope you folks have a good one and stay safe.